Speaker, I will make a statement to the House on the situation in Turkey and Syria. On Monday morning at 1:17 a.m. UK time, a major earthquake struck south-eastern Turkey and northwestern Syria. Measuring 7.8 on the Richter scale, the quake's impact was felt hundreds of miles away in Lebanon, Cyprus, Greece and Israel. Just 9 hours later, at 10:24 London time, a second major earthquake struck the same region with a magnitude of 7.5 on the Richter scale. The first tremor centred on the Turkish city of Gaziantep, some 150 miles from the Turkish-Syrian border. The epicentre of the second quake was approximately 80 miles further north. Mr. Speaker, earthquakes of this severity have not been seen in this region for 80 years. The effects of these two earthquakes have been devastating. At least 2,291 deaths have already been confirmed by the Turkish authorities, and at least 15,834 have been reported injured. These numbers, I regret to inform the House, are highly likely to rise significantly. I know the House will join me today in offering our sincere condolences to the people of Turkey and Syria. Across the region, inhabited by more than 12 million people, more than 6,000 buildings have collapsed. Electricity and gas infrastructure has been severely damaged. Many of the 3.5 million Syrian refugees hosted by Turkey reside in the affected provinces. Turkey's outstanding disaster relief response capability has been severely tested by the sheer scale of this catastrophe. The Turkish government has declared a state of emergency, and they are requesting international assistance on a scale that matches the enormity of the situation that they are facing. Turkey will lead the disaster relief response in the areas of Syria where it has a presence. As of this morning, we know that 3 British nationals are missing, and the Foreign Office's Crisis Response Hub is working to support the at least 35 British nationals who have been directly affected by these earthquakes. And we assess that the likelihood of large-scale British casualties remains low. The Turkish government has contacted His Majesty's government to request support, and we are working closely with our Turkish allies to provide them with the help that they need, as swiftly and as effectively as possible. I've been in direct contact with my Turkish counterpart, and I plan to speak to the UN's Under-Secretary-General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordination this afternoon to discuss future steps. I can tell the House that our 77-strong urban search and rescue team with 4 dogs and state-of-the-art equipment is due to arrive at Gaziantep later today. I have also authorised the deployment of a UK emergency medical assessment team. In Syria, the UK is in contact with our partners on the ground to establish their need and to decide how best to help them. The Conflict Stability and Security Fund will provide an uplift to the opposition Syrian civil defence, commonly known as the White Helmets, to support their emergency response operations across north-west Syria. We are also providing support to Syria through the International Medical Corps and through Save the Children and, of course, through the United Nations agencies. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to stand by the people of Turkey and Syria. We will deliver aid to those in need wherever they are, and we will do so, and as we do so, we will work with our allies and partners around the world to ensure the most effective humanitarian response. I undertake to keep the House updated on the situation on Turkey and Syria as it evolves, and I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy.
Mr. Speaker, the massive earthquakes that struck southern Turkey and northern Syria on Monday have caused utter devastation. More than 5,000 people are likely killed. Tens of thousands injured, vast numbers of buildings and infrastructure destroyed. A frantic rescue effort is underway, with courageous first responders combing through rubble to try and find those buried in debris and dust. The Labour Party, along with the whole House, sends our deepest condolences, thoughts and sympathies to all those whose lives have been devastated by this tragedy. It struck at night when families were sleeping. It struck in winter, with biting winter temperatures and ice and snow hampering relief. and it struck a part of the world that has already known great tragedy and suffering in recent years. Not only have thousands of lives been lost, but it's caused anxiety for all the people of Syria and Turkey, with towns cut off as roads have been split in half. The people of Syria have faced a decade of conflict and violence, and there's simply not the infrastructure to cope with the fallout of this disaster. Turkey, of course, is a close ally of the United Kingdom, and there are many close ties of family and friendship between Britain and the people of Syria. My own constituency is home to a thriving Turkish, Kurdish and Syrian community. There are an estimated 500,000 people of Turkish origin living in the United Kingdom. I know the pain and anxiety that they're now feeling. They will want to know that we have in place all that we can do to support and help them. When an international humanitarian emergency arises like this, Britain, of course, must play its full part. So can I ask the Foreign Secretary to set out what additional financial support that will be made available to relief efforts in the region, and when those funds are likely to be available? Can he also set out what discussions he's had with international organisations working on the ground to ensure that that aid is delivered, and whether the sanctions regime that we have in place with Syria will hamper some of that delivery? He said, of course, that he expects the number of British nationals, sadly, to rise. Does this figure take into account the vast numbers of dual nationals that exist in our country? He explains what efforts are being made by the FCDO to ensure that concerned Turkish and Syrian families in the UK are kept informed. Will there be a constituency hotline to support that? In December, it was reported that the FCDO Syria team had been instructed to cut between 6 and 8 million from its overall budget. Can the Foreign Secretary confirm whether he intends to pursue this cut in the face of this disaster? And can he update the House about not only the immediate response, which we're grateful for today, but come back with a long-term plan?
Foreign Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the right honourable gentleman for the tone that he has taken and the points that he has made, and he is absolutely right that he reflects, I think, the mood of the whole House when we pass on our thoughts not just to those in the affected region, but for those people here in the UK and further afield who may have friends, family and loved ones who have been affected by this terrible situation. With regard to financial support, as I say, we have already given an uplift to the Syrian civil defence, the White Helmets. What other assistance will be needed, we will assess in close coordination, as I say, with the United Nations and other non-government delivery partners on the ground. With regards to the sanctions to Syria, the response in this area, as I said, is predominantly going to be led by the Turkish government in the areas that they have control over, and through non-government agencies, both Syrian non-government agencies and international agencies. So, and I will check that this is the case. My estimations at the moment is that our ability to support will not be hampered by our sanctions regime. When it comes to the future allocation of funds for Syria and further ODA allocations, we are working through that process as we do each year. I'm not able to give him a complete answer to that at the moment, but of course we will look at all allocations in response to what we are sadly seeing unfold on the ground. And I will, of course, endeavour to keep the House updated.
Chair of the Select Committee, unless you can.
Speaker, my heart goes out to all those who have lost loved ones, who are still searching for their loved ones, and those British nationals affected. The people of Syria have lived through 12 years of bombardment, chemical weapons, barrel bombs and rape. But how does Assad, who has already decimated healthcare services by double-tapping and bombing them, respond? Yesterday afternoon, he bombed Mare, which was an area that was affected by the earthquake, in what was a truly callous and heinous attack and opportunism for him to try and continue to attack and destroy the moderate opposition. This is truly heinous, and it was something I warned the Minister about yesterday afternoon. So can the Foreign Secretary please confirm to me what we are doing and what repercussions there will be for Assad for these appalling acts? Secondly, how we will shame Russia and China into reopening the humanitarian corridor that has now been closed for 2 years. And finally, when we look at the integrated review refresh, where Syria has been notably absent as we tilt towards the Indo-Pacific, will he look at the fact that this has turned into a narco state because we have not kept our eyes on it, because those drugs are making their way to Europe whether we like it or not?
Foreign Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is absolutely right to highlight the completely unacceptable bombing of areas in the immediate aftermath of this natural disaster. Sadly, it speaks to a long-standing pattern of behaviour by the Assad regime, a regime that we condemn, have sanctioned, and we will continue to bring about sanctions, working with our international friends and partners to try and prevent behaviour like this from occurring again. Sadly, she will know, the House will know, that Assad's behaviour and the behaviour of the Syrian government in this, as in so many other areas, is completely unacceptable. I can assure her we have not lost interest in this, and the situation in Syria and the response of the Assad regime is a topic of conversation that regularly comes up when I speak to interlocutors in the region and beyond.
MP spokesperson Chris Law.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The earthquakes that hit Turkey and Syria yesterday are truly devastating and have been on all our screens. And I've just been hearing from Sky News at least 5,000 have been confirmed to have been killed, with this death toll undoubtedly rising in the coming days. And of course our thoughts, prayers and sympathies are with all those affected. Footage shows acute and widespread destruction across central and south-eastern Turkey, and in Syria, a country still suffering from over a decade of war. The cost to human life and infrastructure is unthinkable. Reports have emerged of survivors calling out to rescue teams, texting loved ones and sending voice notes to journalists for help, many of whom cannot be saved due to lack of rescue equipment. This is truly, truly tragic. The SNP welcomed SCDO's decision to send a team of search and rescue specialists, equipment and rescue dogs to Turkey, and for coordination with the UN in support for those in Syria. The international community must continue listening to those on the ground, the UN, Red Crescent and the White Helmets in the coming days and weeks, so that the best relief and assistance possible can be delivered. A main barrier will be access to Syria in the first place, with only one land border between Turkey and Syria. So therefore I ask, what's the UK Government doing at the UN level to try and open additional crossing points for humanitarian assistance? Additionally, getting aid and humanitarian relief across front lines and rebel-held areas will require a humanitarian corridor. So can the Minister detail what negotiations are taking place to agree this for affected communities? And furthermore, Turkey and Syria are in the middle of a brutal cold snap, with many roads and cities already covered in snow and now damaged in a disaster. So is the SCD organising food supplies, further medical aid and in particular cold weather equipment for survivors to affected communities? And finally, Mr Speaker, given thousands have been left homeless and have lost everything, is the UK Government considering short-term family scheme visas for those survivors with families here in the UK to support them?
Foreign Secretary.
Mr Speaker, I thank the honourable gentleman for the point he made about the speed of our technical response. The USAR team, the Urban Search and Rescue team that we have dispatched are world-class and they have world-class equipment. With regards to the humanitarian access routes, as I say, I'll be speaking to Martin Griffiths at the UN later on this afternoon. I know both at ministerial level and official level we will be liaising with our international partners to make sure we coordinate in terms of what Turkey needs for the response. As I say, I have already authorised the deployment of a medical assessment team. The further stages of requirement, and the requirement will evolve over time. We will, of course, work closely with our international partners to make sure we address that. With regard to Syria, as he says, working through organisations like the Red Crescent, the UN, will be the way that we deploy support there. And with regard to what more we can do to those dislocated people, of course, we will coordinate with the Turkish authorities, with the Syrian with those active in Syria as best we can, and we'll make any decisions in due course.
Howell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, I was able to contact my opposite number in the Turkish delegation to the Council of Europe. He described the situation in Turkey as overwhelming, and he has now written to us to thank us for all that we have done. Does my honourable friend agree that we should do as much as possible to help the Turks in this terrible situation?
My honourable friend makes an incredibly important point. This is the scale of this catastrophe is one that we are unused to, and sadly, for the very reasons that have been mentioned, both the fact that this is a part of Turkey and Syria, particularly in Syria, which has been receiving end of a huge amount of violence already, and because of the time of year, and because we are now seeing multiple shocks, and it's entirely feasible there may be more. This is almost an unprecedented situation. We will, of course, work very, very closely with our Turkish friends and allies in terms of the ongoing assessment of need and our response to that need, working closely with our international partners.
Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the human toll of this disaster is immense. And I want to thank the Secretary of State for the really speedy dispatch of British search and rescue and medical teams. Like many British, Kurdish, Turkish members of community, my family woke up yesterday trying to make sure to find out whether our distant relatives, our relatives were safe in Turkey, in Malatya. We were very lucky that the majority of our family are safe. I spent the whole day with Turkish, Kurdish members of the community, the local community centre, hundreds of people who are desperately trying to find out if their loved ones are safe. The Foreign Office has provided a number, helpline, but it's only for British citizens who are stuck in this disaster. There are thousands of British people who've been impacted by this. Can the Secretary of State tell me what support, if any, will be available to British Kurdish people who have family in Turkey who they're trying to find news about? What can he do?
Foreign Secretary.
The Honourable Lady makes an important point about how disconcerting this is for people who have friends and loved ones in the region. Obviously, the responsibility of the FCDO is to provide support for British nationals overseas. That has to be our area of priority. If there are people, whether they be in the UK or in the region or beyond, who are fearful of British nationals who may be caught up for this, then our advice is to get in contact with the FCDO. As she says, there is a helpline there is a team that's been set up to respond. Whilst I appreciate how disconcerting it is, obviously we don't have the capacity to extend that level of support to non-British nationals, but of course we are working very closely with the Turkish authorities and for those organisations on the ground in Syria to try and provide the maximum level of support that we can for those non-British nationals who sadly have been caught up in this terrible situation.
Mark Pritchard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I commend the Foreign Secretary for his speedy response and those of his ministers and officials at this time. He will know that this tragedy is still unfolding. There have been great stories of courage and survival. But does he agree that there's also been an opportunity for international cooperation and diplomacy from perhaps unexpected sources, such as the government of Greece, who sent 21 firefighters and other humanitarian and rescue workers, and the government of Armenia? And this is the time for the region to come together in the common effort of saving their fellow human beings.
Foreign Secretary.
My honourable friend makes an incredibly important point, and what we are seeing is over and over again real acts of solidarity with the people of Turkey and indeed the people of Syria who have suffered so much as a result of these earthquakes. I have no doubt that there will be a number of terrible stories unfolding through this awful situation, but also I think this is an incredible opportunity for us to demonstrate our shared humanity and our desire to maximise the effort to prevent further loss of life. And I commend those countries in the region who have put aside whatever difficulties they may have to come together and support Turkey and Syria in their time of need.
Alice McGovern.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's hard to imagine a worse place in the world for this to have happened. And Gaziantep is only about 100 kilometres from Aleppo in Syria. And I know that the Foreign Secretary and all ministers like us on this side will be thinking of those refugees who fled the horrors of Aleppo and Idlib only to be faced with such a horrendous national disaster. Yeah. So can I ask the Foreign Secretary just to think again about the white helmets specifically? I wholeheartedly welcome what he has said, but that brave organisation has really struggled to maintain its sustainability, and I would implore him, and I know he will be sympathetic to this, to look again at funding for them and make sure that we do all we can to help the white helmets.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take this opportunity to commend the Honourable Lady for her long-standing commitment to this part of the world and the refugees from that part of the world. We have been a long-standing supporter of the white helmets, as she will know. As I say, we have given a financial uplift in direct response to this, and we will, of course, look at what the longer-term implications of these earthquakes will be as we assess what our international support will be in the future. I cannot give her a hard commitment at this point. I think she'll understand that, but we will, of course, look very, very seriously about the implications of this terrible situation.
Vicky Ford.
Thank you. The situation is truly horrific, and it's good to know that the UK is contributing not just manpower but also expertise. But we know that without further help, thousands more people will die. I see that an appeal has been launched this morning by Oxfam, the British Red Cross, Christian Aid, Islamic Relief, Action Aid. Will he join me in encouraging the British people to dig deep into their own pockets, because every single pound will make a difference?
Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, my right honourable friend is absolutely right. There is a long-standing tradition of generosity, and I have no doubt that the British people will, of course, provide a huge amount of philanthropic support to those affected. As I say, the UK government has already made a commitment to give funding in direct support of the people in the relief effort, and our teams of experts will be a force multiplier, working, as I say, with state-of-the-art equipment and techniques, some of the best urban search and rescue teams in the world. And we will, of course, have an ongoing assessment of what further need Turkey and Syria have.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I thank the Secretary of State for coming to the House so that we can express our sorrow and solidarity with the people of Turkey and Syria, but also those families up and down this country who are desperately worried for those back home. I welcome, of course, the support that's been offered and the offer potentially of more, but may I press him particularly on Syria? We know that organisations on the ground are ill-equipped to hand out the support that is desperately needed. Many of them are also affected by these earthquakes. And he himself said this was exceptional, 1 in 80 years. So while we aren't planning to be sending personnel and equipment into Syria itself, may I simply urge him to think as creatively as he can, to make whatever exceptions he can, so that we can not hurt those who have already been hurt so much.
Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As my right honourable friend, the Development Minister, said earlier this morning, we are working closely with the United Nations, and we will look creatively at what we can do to support them and our partners on the ground to maximise our ability to get humanitarian aid and support to the people who need it most.
Duncan Smith.
Mr. Speaker, can I commend my right honourable friend for coming so swiftly to the House and for the actions that he and the Department has already taken. This would be a bad enough and a terrible enough set of circumstances in its own, but to be overlaid by a brutal civil war going on in the same area and by a very, very terrible winter, it makes it even worse beyond almost imagination. I, like many other in this House, have many Turkish and Turkish Cypriot constituents who are very, very worried now at this time about their families and are finding it very difficult to get proper information. I know my right honourable friend has put up a hotline. Can I suggest to him it might also be helpful, because they're contacting me and I'm sure they're contacting my colleagues across the House, could we not have an MP's hotline on this one specific, so that we can help our constituents to find out as much information as possible and set their worries at ease?
Secretary.
My right honourable friend makes an important point. We will, of course, look at the most effective way of providing information. One of the learnings we've had from past consular challenges or acute situations like this is having one point of convergence is often most effective. I'm not going to be hidebound, though, and I will look at the best way of making sure that whether people here in the UK are trying to get information about British nationals, or whether people of Turkish or indeed Syrian heritage are trying to get information about non-British nationals, we will look to facilitate that. Obviously, for non-British nationals, we don't hold necessarily the information. And I will look very carefully about what he says about ensuring that parliamentary colleagues have swift and accurate access to information. I'll update the House on that in due course.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for his statement, and please let me express my condolences for all those who have lost their loved ones. And my thoughts especially are to my large Turkish diaspora who call Edmonton their home. I would like to ask the Minister that he would commit to giving regular updates in the House for those who are worried, and also would he be able to give us an update on what additional aid will be provided once this initial assessment has been done?
Secretary.
The Honourable Lady makes a sad but important point. That this situation will evolve, and sadly I think is highly likely to get much worse before it gets better. I will, of course, make sure that my office liaises with Mr. Speaker about the most effective way to provide timely updates to the House, whether it be via the dispatch box or in some other format. I recognise that certainly over the next few days and going into next week, perhaps when the House isn't sitting, the dispatch box might not be the most effective way of doing so, but I also recognise that this situation will be coming to perhaps its peak over the next couple of days. And rightly, members of this House will expect to have updates, and I will try and find some way of most effectively facilitating that.
Sir Julian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A situation of this sort in a fellow NATO member would seem to be tailor-made for military assistance from us to their civil powers. Do we not have any Royal Navy ships in the area, and are there not Royal Marine contingents that could be put quickly to work with the agreement of the Turkish authorities?
Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, of course I will take the ideas that the right honourable gentleman put forward very, very seriously. Certainly the initial assessment of need is very much in the urban search and rescue, and the UK, along with a number of other NATO and non-NATO partners, are putting forward that capability. I suspect medical assistance will be next, but we will continue liaising very, very closely with the Turkish government and the United Nations about what is needed on each side of the border.
Sorry, no, Matt Warren, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And my heart goes out to all of those people who have suffered in this and continue to suffer in this dreadful earthquake. The loss of humanitarian aid routes to northwest Syria, which went down from 4 to 1 in 2020, has had an immeasurable impact on the effective delivery of aid to the area. This has meant virtually no resources and help for those already worsening in this dreadful humanitarian situation that was already there, let alone coping with the impacts of this truly awful earthquake. So how is the Secretary of State going to ensure that aid is going to get to the people who need it?
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Lady raises a very important point, a point that I raised in my last bilateral meeting with Martin Griffiths. It is something which has, as she said, had a significant detrimental effect on the international community's ability to provide humanitarian support to some of the most needy people in the world, particularly now in the time of winter and particularly in light of these earthquakes. I can assure her and the House that when I speak with Martin Griffiths later on today, this is exactly one of the topics that we'll be discussing.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. It's a stark reminder of the importance of resilience, our ability to deal with these acute events, whether they happen to us or our ability to help others. Could I very much welcome the statement from the Foreign Secretary, but the first 72 hours, as he knows, are absolutely critical. Military assistance has been mentioned. We have assets in Cyprus, including rotary systems, that could be put to use. I wonder whether we could offer these to the Turkish authorities in this critical time period.
Mr. Speaker, we have been in close contact, as I say, very early in this situation with our Turkish counterparts. Obviously, we have a very close military relationship through NATO. Turkey are a large and sophisticated armed forces in their own right. The thing they have asked us for most is one of the areas where we genuinely provide world-class, top-of-the-class capability, and that's in our urban search and rescue teams. Of course, as the situation evolves, and sadly, as I say, it's a high likelihood it will deteriorate, we will listen very, very carefully to what further requirements they have, and we'll respond in due course.
Okay, sir.
Mr. Speaker, in just a matter of weeks, the holy month of Ramadan, where Muslims fast from dawn till dusk, begins. Yet Muslims and others in Syria and Turkey are in the middle of harsh weather conditions, with many roads and cities covered in snow and now damaged by this disaster. So does the FCDO plan to work with international partners to organise, and I'm specifically asking about hygiene products, including sanitary products, as we know that natural disasters disproportionately impact women and girls? And will the Foreign Secretary join me in commending charities such as Islamic Relief, who have mobilised teams in both Syria and Turkey, and since Monday have already raised over £1 million to help those affected?
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to pay tribute to Islamic Relief and other organisations, other charities and non-governmental organisations that are active in the region. She is absolutely right that sadly, whether it be natural disaster or conflict or man-made disaster, women and girls always bear the brunt. It is one of the sad truisms of development and humanitarian relief. So she is absolutely right to raise the specific needs of women and girls. I'm very proud to say that through my whole time as a Minister and a Secretary of State, the plight of women and girls has been at the heart of our foreign policy and development policy, and we will seek to ensure, whether it's directly or through partners, that we put forward plans to specifically address the needs of women and girls in this incredibly difficult set of circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've watched, as everyone across the UK has and around the world, with horror and heartbreak at the scenes from the earthquake in Syria and Turkey. I know that whenever a disaster happens, the UK always steps up, and people are so generous with wanting to help. And I asked my right honourable friend if he could just confirm what steps people could do in Watford and across the UK to donate and to help the people, so that that reaches the front line and helps those who are currently suffering the unimaginable.
Foreign Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I have no doubt that a number of organisations will, in fact, I know a number of organisations, we've already discussed Islamic Relief, Red Cross, Red Crescent. There'll be a number of organisations that will be putting forward appeals. Of course, we recognise that for many, many people in the UK, the economic situation is difficult, but I have no doubt, notwithstanding those domestic circumstances, the British people will do what they always do, which is rise to the occasion and support people around the world who are in even greater need than they are.
Jessica Morton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And following on from my honourable friend from Enfield North and others, members of the Kurdish-Turkish community in Newport are clearly also desperately worried about family members and friends, and our hearts go out to them. Can I just reiterate to the Secretary of State what others have said, the need for really clear channels of communication to help us make urgent inquiries for constituents, whether it be drop-ins upstairs or whatever, really, and support in country country for UK citizens and dual nationals, as well as us doing everything we can on a humanitarian level.
Foreign Secretary.
I completely recognise the desire of the House to be kept informed, and also to be able to provide a service to the constituents who, quite understandably, will be very, very, very worried about friends, loved ones. I will take that on board. My team will be making note of what she and the other members of the House have said on this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And having spent a considerable amount of time in Turkey during my lifetime, can I share the comments that the Foreign Secretary has said and say how much I agree with them? Can I also echo the calls that we need to ensure that the White Helmets continue to receive funding in the long term? I met with them in October last year, and they said it was absolutely key to see British funding continue the good work that they're doing. Just in relation to his statement, can I ask how many people he is intending to deploy from the medical assessment team? And can I also just commend all of the volunteers that have gone from our rapid response unit within the Foreign Office to help in Turkey at such short notice? And just following on from the member for Watford's point about making sure we are signposting where the British public can give money and aid to people in Turkey and how we can go about that. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, can we ensure that the reporting mechanisms coming out of Turkey are given in real time to members of Parliament so that we might be able to respond in helping constituents find out about loved ones, but also how we can most effectively help?
Foreign Secretary.
With regard to his specific question about the size of the medical response team, I don't have that figure at the moment. The point I would make to the House is it is inevitable that the numbers, both in terms of sadly the fatalities, the injuries, and also the numbers of British experts that we put into support will change over time. And indeed, I strongly suspect that the figures that I outlined at the dispatch box at the start of the statement are now sadly already out of date. I completely take the point that he and others have made about the need for accurate and ongoing and timely information, and I will endeavour to make sure that I provide that to all members of the House.
Pim Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to send my thoughts and condolences to all those who have suffered and lost loved ones in the tragedy in Syria and Turkey. This horrific disaster does not discriminate in its victims, and political obstacles must not be allowed to define who receives our support. So can the Secretary of State explain what he's doing to secure humanitarian corridors to ensure all Syrians receive humanitarian aid? And will he respond to appeals for more heavy lifting equipment and fuel to run those machines?
Foreign Secretary.
The Honourable Lady is absolutely right that disasters like this do not discriminate, and neither will we. We will work closely with the United Nations. Obviously, we do not have a relationship with the Assad government in Syria, but notwithstanding that, we will work with those organisations, whether it be the White Helmets, the United Nations or others, who are on the ground in Syria, and of course work closely with the Turkish government in response to that.
Halding.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My thoughts are with my constituents who are so desperately worried about loved ones, and I echo the comments made by members across the House of the need for that timely and accurate information to help Syrian, Kurdish and Turkish nationals living in the UK who've been affected by this. But I wonder if the Secretary of State can answer what representations the UK is making to drive up humanitarian access to Syria from Turkey up the international agenda and open new flows of aid to northwest Syria.
Mr. Speaker, this is a specific subject that I'll be raising with Martin Griffiths when I speak to him later on this afternoon. Humanitarian access routes have been constrained over recent years. That has caused more suffering, and it's something that we will seek to address.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Given the immense scale of this terrible tragedy and the reports this morning that people are using their mobile phones while trapped under the rubble as they cry for help, do we have the capacity to send a further search and rescue team? Because it would, I think, seem, given the scale, that that would certainly assist. And secondly, may I ask him, does he expect the Disasters Emergency Committee to issue an appeal?
I will, on his last point, I will certainly look at that, and I will ask my officials to liaise with regard to raising a specific appeal. What future assistance we give, I think, will be very much guided by the requests of the Turkish authorities and the feedback of the initial wave of experts that we have provided. I realise that I failed to fully answer the Honourable Lady's question about heavy lift equipment and fuel thereof. Again, that will be something that we will listen very carefully to the request from the Turkish authorities. One of the reasons why actually our USAR team is so valuable is because we have got absolutely state-of-the-art search and rescue equipment, which coordinates very, very closely with the other equipment that is easier to get onto the ground by those partners who are physically closer to the incident.
Speaker, the Foreign Secretary has been really helpful this morning, and our French, everyone's been very... We're not experts, but when I see these pictures on the television and hear voices calling, children calling for help, the crisis is now. Can we get people, heavy lifting equipment, the right expertise there now, in planes, getting there now to rescue these little children and their families?
Foreign Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman's desire to help and help quickly is completely understandable, and I can assure him is shared by everyone right across the House and right across government. I spoke, as I say, I had an exchange of communications with my Turkish counterpart first thing yesterday morning. Our urban search and rescue team were mobilised, convened yesterday, and they will be on the ground and operational. The assessment is by today. This is a very swift response, and I recognise, however, that this is a challenge that is going to be enduring, and of course that feedback from them in terms of what else that we can do and do quickly will be incredibly important, and we'll do that in close coordination with our international friends and partners.
Chris Stevens.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Foreign Secretary for his statement. This disaster has been keenly felt by the Kurdish community across these islands, and the Foreign Secretary will be aware that this region in particular has been the source of conflict between Syrian and Kurdish forces. Could he say just a bit more about what the government's doing to liaise with Kurdish charities and the Kurdish community? I'm thinking, for example, the Kurdish Red Crescent charity, and to make sure that the Kurdish population get the support they need and that the aid goes to help the Kurdish people.
The Speaker is right. The people of this region have suffered more than enough. And sadly, this natural disaster will amplify the suffering of the man-made disaster that we have seen in that part of Syria and the ripple effect that that has had into that part of Turkey. I can assure him that we will work with as wide a range of international partners as possible to ensure that no community is in any way disadvantaged in terms of our support. As I say, this, as the Honourable Lady said, this tragedy has not discriminated, and neither will we.
Mr. Speaker, I echo the words of condolences by the Foreign Secretary. The number of those who have died and have been injured is immeasurable, and send my condolences to everyone in that area. Scammers may use social media information to contact individuals in the UK with links to the impacted regions, using their fears for loved ones to request money transfers. What measures are the UK government considering to ensure that such scams are highlighted and families are protected?
Mr. Speaker, sadly the Honourable Lady makes an incredibly important point. There will always be vultures that will seek to make money through the tragedy and of others and the concern of their friends and loved ones. My strong advice is the same as we would give in all circumstances. Be very, very suspicious of unsolicited communications. Far better to go to well-established avenues of support. They are often, in circumstances like this, the most effective on the ground anyway, and urge people to not let their understandable desire to give support quickly blind them to the fact that there are people that will seek to take advantage of their goodwill. She's absolutely right to raise it.
Jim Shah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also thank the Minister very much for his positive answers and for the very obvious as well government compassion for those who have suffered much due to the earthquake, and add my thoughts as well for all those and prayers for all those who have lost loved ones. The earthquake has affected large areas of northern Syria, including the Kurdish region, where many Yazidis are still attempting to recover after the Daesh genocide. Will UK aid sent to relieve the suffering caused by the earthquake also be sent to minority communities rather than just to the large population centres? They all need help. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman who speaks regularly and with great passion about the need to particularly be conscious of minority groups, particularly religious and ethnic minority groups. He's absolutely right to do so. I can give him the assurance that I will, in turn, seek assurances from my officials that our support is reaching everyone that it needs to, and not just those who perhaps have the best pre-established routes for humanitarian support.